Few in the village spoke about him, and those who did used a tone of reverence mixed with fear. Enoch was different from the other men of his generation. While the others tilled the land and built their clans, he walked silently under the starry sky, murmuring prayers that no one understood. From a young age, he seemed to carry a knowledge that the elders could not teach. His gaze, deep and penetrating, gave the impression that he saw something beyond this world. He lived among men, yet belonged to another realm. The scriptures describe him briefly but mysteriously. Enoch walked with God, then he was no more because God took him away. But what really happened on that night when he disappeared? It was an ordinary day, with no premonitions that anything extraordinary would occur. The sun was already setting on the horizon, dyeing the sky in golden and purple hues. Enoch left the village as usual, following a narrow path that led to a clearing where he liked to pray. He felt something different that afternoon, a silent call echoing in his chest. The wind blew strangely, as if whispering his name. The air seemed to vibrate around him, charged with an invisible presence. When he lifted his eyes to the heavens, he saw something he could never have imagined, an intense, living light descending like a celestial torrent, completely enveloping him. Few in the village spoke about him, and those who did used a tone of reverence mixed with fear. Enoch was different from the other men of his generation. While the others tilled the land and built their clans, he walked silently under the starry sky, murmuring prayers that no one understood. From a young age, he seemed to carry a knowledge that the elders could not teach. His gaze, deep and penetrating, gave the impression that he saw something beyond this world. He lived among men, yet belonged to another realm. The villagers knew he was not a prophet like the few who had come before, but there was something about him that made him untouchable. Scripture mentions him briefly, but his lack of a recorded death turned him into an enigma. Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. Genesis 5:24. But what does it mean to be taken by God? No one could answer that. There was no body, no wake. His name was murmured through generations, always shrouded in mystery. But that night when he disappeared, something supernatural occurred. Something that human words can hardly describe. It was an ordinary day, with no premonitions of extraordinary events. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky in golden and purple tones, reflecting on the distant hills. Enoch left the village as he did every day, following a narrow trail that led to an isolated clearing. That was the place where he sought God, where his soul found peace amid the silence of creation. But that afternoon, the silence seemed denser, almost tangible. The wind blew in a strange manner, carrying a murmur that he could not comprehend. The nature around him seemed to hold its breath. Then, without warning, a glow tore through the sky. At first, it came as a faint reflection, but soon it grew in intensity until it illuminated everything around. It was neither lightning nor fire, nor any light that human eyes could conceive. It was something living, pulsating, radiating an overwhelming presence. The air vibrated, and a deep sound resounded, like distant trumpets echoing through the mountains. Enoch felt a shiver run down his spine, and for a moment everything around him ceased to exist. God was calling, and he knew this was no ordinary visit. The ground beneath his feet seemed to vibrate, not like an earthquake, but as if the very earth recognized the presence of the one descending from the heavens. Enoch felt his body being overtaken by an unfamiliar lightness, as if gravity were losing its hold on him. His heart pounded fast, but not from fear. It was a different sensation, as if an invisible force were touching every part of his being. The descending light was so intense that his human eyes could not bear it, so he closed them, yet he saw everything. It was as if a vision were being imprinted within his mind, revealing images beyond earthly comprehension. Voices began to echo, multiple, in perfect harmony, speaking a language he did not know, yet his soul understood. Words of power and majesty filled the air, and then, amidst that celestial radiance, a form began to reveal itself. It was neither a man nor an angel like those described in ancient times. It was something greater, something that transcended creation itself. Enoch knew he was in the presence of a messenger of the Most High, a being whose contemplation would transform his spirit. His knees buckled, and he fell face down to the ground, for no man could remain standing before that presence. The very air around him became dense, charged with a power that pressed upon his soul as if an invisible hand held him in reverence. Then, from within the light, a voice emerged, not loud, not deafening, but deep, resonating inside him like the echo of eternity. "Enoch, son of men, you are favored among your generation." The words vibrated in the air, laden with an indescribable spiritual weight. He tried to speak, but his mouth did not obey. His body was frozen, not from fear, but from the absolute certainty that he had been touched by something sacred. The voice continued, "You have been called because your walk is just before the Lord, and today you shall see what no mortal has seen." Upon hearing this, his spirit was overcome with an ecstasy he had never felt. He felt his flesh dissolving like mist in the sun. Everything earthly began to dissipate, and for the first time, Enoch realized he was being lifted. The earth was left behind. He was no longer in the world of men. Time and space seemed to lose their meaning as Enoch ascended. He no longer felt the weight of his own body, nor the wind against his face. It was as if he were being carried by an invisible force, traversing layers of creation that mortal eyes had never beheld. The surrounding light changed hues, oscillating between gold, blue, and gleaming white, and within it there were shadows of immense, majestic figures that seemed to watch his arrival. He tried to discern their faces, but realized that his mortal eyes could not endure the sight. The sound that enveloped him was indescribable. Celestial trumpets, chants of countless voices, a hymn that seemed to pulsate with the very universe. His heart understood the melody, but his human mind could not process it fully. It was as if the cosmos itself were singing the Creator's glory. And then, suddenly, all fell silent. The light around him receded, and he realized he was facing something even greater. A colossal structure, which could not have been built by human hands, rose before him. Resplendent gates opened, and a new reality was revealed to his eyes. He had crossed the boundaries of the known world. Enoch now stood before what appeared to be the entrance to a celestial domain. The ground beneath his feet was like liquid crystal, reflecting a light that came from no sun. The columns that supported the gates were immense, carved with details that seemed alive, changing shape as he observed them. An overwhelming sensation seized him. He no longer belonged to the earth. It was as if every cell in his body were being rewritten to sustain that new existence. Ahead, a figure approached. It was not like the angels the ancients described, with human forms and resplendent wings. It was something beyond that. Its presence radiated authority, and its eyes, like living embers, seemed to pierce Enoch's soul. "You have been called to see the mysteries of the Most High," the figure declared, its voice not sounding like ordinary sound, but like a thought manifesting directly within him. Enoch wanted to ask what that meant, but he realized that answers would not come through words, but through experience. The unknown was only just beginning. Enoch felt every fiber of his being vibrate before that presence. He couldn't say whether he still possessed a physical body or if his essence had been transformed. But one thing was certain: he was no longer the same. The figure that had approached extended its hand, and the moment Enoch looked upon it, he understood something indescribable. Etched there were shapes and symbols that seemed to contain the entire history of creation, not just of the world he knew, but of entire realities beyond his comprehension. Upon touching that hand, his mind was flooded with visions. He saw the beginning of all things, when darkness still covered the void and the creative word was spoken. He saw the heavens being stretched like a veil and the stars positioned with mathematical precision. But he also saw something terrible, the fall of those who once dwelled among the saints, corruption spreading through creation, the cry of the innocent, and the wrath of the Most High burning like a fire that no being could extinguish. Enoch understood that he had not been called merely to contemplate divine mysteries, but to witness hidden and terrifying truths. He tried to look away, but it was impossible. Each scene unfolded before him like an inevitable account of humanity's destiny. He saw the Watchers, angels who had abandoned their celestial abodes to take wives among the sons of men. He saw their monstrous offspring, creatures that should never have existed, and the suffering they brought upon the world. He felt the weight of the rebellion of those who attempted to usurp God's dominion, their arrogance, and the terrible consequence of their actions. Then, a deafening sound filled the space where he stood. A choir of angelic voices proclaimed justice, and Enoch realized he was before the celestial council, where destinies were sealed and divine decrees established. At the center of that assembly, a throne shone with a light so intense that his mortal gaze could not endure it. Yet he did not need to see to know who was there. His entire being recognized the presence of the one who rules over all. "Your eyes have been opened, Enoch," said the same voice that had brought him here. "Now you shall be the messenger of all that you have seen." The weight of that revelation crashed upon Enoch like a storm. His spirit trembled before the grandeur of what had been shown to him. He was not merely a spectator. He was the chosen one. He felt his mind expand, absorbing knowledge that surpassed human understanding. The laws governing the universe, the hidden secrets of the heavens, the cycles of time and destiny, everything was revealed to him in an instant that seemed infinite. Yet along with the knowledge came an unbearable weight. He understood the imminent judgment that would come upon the earth, the ruin that approached humanity because of its corruption. Enoch wanted to speak, to ask why, to intercede for men. But his voice did not emerge. A sacred silence took hold of him. The truth lay before his eyes, and he could not change it. Then one of the beings nearby moved and touched his forehead with a burning glow. "Your lips will be opened in due time," the voice said. "But now you must continue." Like a river carried by its current, Enoch was led onward, beyond the celestial council, to a place where no man had ever trod. He was taken to a region where the heavens merged into indescribable colors and forms, a realm above even the angels, where the essence of creation vibrated in perfect harmony. Before him rose columns of living fire, intertwined with lightning that did not burn but pulsed like divine energy. At the center of that place, an immense structure stretched out, something that seemed at once a palace and an open book, as if the Creator's own knowledge were inscribed there. "Here are kept the records of the universe," said the voice by his side. "Nothing is lost. Every word spoken, every thought, every action is written before it is even done." Enoch shuddered. He saw countless scrolls floating in the air, spinning in an orderly dance, written in a language he did not know, yet somehow understood. One particular book shone before him, and as he approached, he felt a terrible truth penetrate his soul. His name was there. His destiny was sealed. "You will not return as before," said the voice, "for you have been called to an eternal purpose." Enoch felt a strange serenity take hold of him. It was not fear nor despair. It was an acceptance that came from something beyond his own understanding. His heart knew that that moment could not be altered. He stood before eternity, and eternity had called him. Slowly, he extended his hand and touched the book that shone before him. In the instant his fingers met the golden surface, his mind was transported to another level of consciousness. He saw the fabric of time unravel like a scroll, revealing the destiny of humanity in endless cycles. Wars, the rise and fall of empires, prophets crying out in the desert, the birth of an alliance between God and men, and then an indescribable moment, a promise fulfilled in flesh and spirit, a sacrifice that would change everything. Enoch could not fully comprehend, but he felt that this was the center of all things. He wanted to ask, but before he could form a thought, he felt himself being pulled back. The book retreated to its place, and the voice beside him whispered softly, "Now you know, but there is yet more to see." Suddenly, Enoch was led to another space, unlike anything he had seen before. It was a vast hall where thrones of light stretched across an endless horizon, and at the center of them all, a greater, incomparable throne surrounded by indescribable glory. Powerful angels, whose very presence made the mountains tremble, bowed before the one seated there. Enoch felt his spirit shudder, for he understood where he was, before the supreme judge, the Lord of Lords. Yet, to his surprise, there was an empty throne beside the main one. A profound silence dominated the space, and then, without words, Enoch understood. Something was about to happen in due time, a mystery that, for now, remained hidden, but that one day would be revealed to men. Before he could even reflect on its meaning, he felt a force envelop him. He was not falling, nor being pulled back. It was as if he were being absorbed by the very light. The celestial world around him began to fade, and he realized his journey was coming to an end, but not as he had expected. The light around Enoch began to retract, and the sensation of lightness that had enveloped him was replaced by something denser, more earthly. He realized he was being returned, but not in the way he had come. His body seemed different, no longer entirely human, no longer confined by mortal flesh. His mind had expanded, bearing a weight that could not be expressed in words. He tried to understand what had happened, but knew that the fullness of that revelation could only be assimilated over time, or perhaps never. Then he felt the ground beneath his feet once more. The clearing where he had often knelt to pray was there, as if nothing had changed. The wind blew as before, and the sounds of nature filled the air. But something was different. The world around him seemed smaller, almost insignificant compared to the grandeur of what he had witnessed. He looked at his own hands, hoping to find in them some visible mark of what he had experienced. But everything seemed the same, or almost. His eyes now saw beyond what they once could. He felt every particle of air, every vibration of time, as if he were simultaneously here and somewhere else. Enoch knew he could no longer live among men as before. He had been transformed. His heart still beat, but it no longer belonged to the earth. He tried to take a step, but felt an invisible resistance, as if the very world were distancing itself from him. Then certainty came. He would not stay. This was not a return. It was a farewell. One final vision was granted to him. He saw his descendants, his sons and grandsons, scattered through time, saw humanity multiply, saw corruption grow, saw the flood that would come to purify the earth. But he also saw the promise, the plan that God had determined from the beginning. And then, without pain, without fear, without farewells, Enoch was taken. His body dissolved into the light. His essence was swept away to where only those called by the Most High could go. The village never found his body, and future generations would only hear whispers about his departure. And Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. Yet what he saw in the heavens, the mysteries revealed to him, remained beyond the reach of men. And perhaps, one day, if God permits, they will be known once again. Enoch's absence spread through the village like a whisper in the wind. At first, they believed he had withdrawn for a long fast or meditation, as he often did, but the days passed and he did not return. His children searched for him in the mountains, in the caves, and along the rivers, but there were no traces, no footprints, no sign of his existence. It was as if he had never been there. The elders murmured among themselves, recalling his enigmatic words. his solitary prayers, his gaze that always seemed to see beyond what others could see. The Lord took him, someone finally said, and no one dared to contest. The truth was simple and irrefutable. Enoch did not die. He was taken to be with God, and as the years passed, his story became a sacred mystery, told from generation to generation, a silent testament that communion with the Creator can transcend even death. But no one knew exactly what he had seen. No one knew what God had revealed to him. And perhaps that was the greatest mystery of all. Centuries passed, and the mention of Enoch remained in the scriptures, brief and enigmatic, yet powerful. And Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. The wise pondered the meaning of those words, while the faithful wondered what it meant to walk with God to the point of being taken without experiencing death. Some believed he had become an angel, a mediator between the heavens and the earth. Others thought that his knowledge was sealed until a predetermined time. But what no one could deny was the impact his story had left. Among the ancient peoples, his name was spoken with reverence, and many desired to understand the mystery of his departure. Yet, the truth of his journey remained hidden, concealed in celestial abodes, where only those called by the Most High could know. And so the legend of Enoch traversed time, like an echo from an invisible realm, an invitation for men to seek God with the same intensity. For if there was one certainty in Enoch's story, it was this: he who truly walks with God will never be lost.